Hello again, everybody. Zagatech is here with my Impact Wrestling review for this Thursday, May the 22nd, 2014. Alright, it was okay Impact tonight. As you see by the subtitle, MVP and his crew of thugs, as I call them now, Kenny King and Bobby Lashley, took over Impact and really dominated. It all started from the very beginning of the show. We had some decent things happening. Of course, possible seeds for matches to be announced probably the next couple weeks, getting ready for Slammiversary. And like I said, MVP and crew dominated from the start as we would kick off with them beating down Kaz. Now, Kaz, of course, as I mentioned last week, he is done with the company. This was taped. All these impacts were taped a few weeks ago. So these are some of Kaz's final appearances in TNA. Even though he was beaten down by MVP, he's probably like, it was better than last week. At least it's better than last week. Went on to that wing with that fucking Menagerie group. Thank God Menagerie took the week off this week after that horrible segment. It made him look bad. Now, they made Menagerie look bad for the second week, making him look stupid in that segment last week with Steve not even wrestling. At least with MVP and his crew. TNA didn't do anything stupid with them yet. Didn't make him look stupid yet. Now, we start off with the attack on Cass and he went out to the ring. Now, MVP and Kenny King have been heels before. MVP has been a heel in WWE. He was a pretty good heel in WWE. Kenny King has always been heel. And a decent one at that in TNA. Bobby Lashley in either TNA or WWE has never been heel. So it's kind of surreal and strange to see Bobby Lashley be a heel. Of course, this whole crew emanated last week with the beatdown on EY. And I still can't believe that happened. You know, I never thought I would see MVP turned heel in TNA. Well, I think we should know that was coming, but I didn't know it was going to come this quickly. And also, didn't think it was going to form a group, especially with Lashley turning heel. So they all came down saying that we're addicted to power, money, power, and respect. That should be the group name. MPR. Money, power, respect. But it needs something more catchy. But until I can think of a nickname for them, like an Evolution or Nation Domination, cool little group name, the only group name I can think of is MPR. Money, power, respect. Because they said that numerous times in a segment. As MVP crowed about his dominance and his power-hungry attitude, and the way they set him up, like the whole plan was all in place. I think it was a few months ago we saw Bobby Lashley take on Kenny King. They didn't really battled. Kenny King got counted out. Maybe we know why now. Because Kenny King and Lashley knew this plan all along with MVP. Storyline-wise, this plan must have been in place months ago. And now it's all being unveiled. The master plan is being unveiled. It's being rolled out. Being revealed to the entire world. Who were blind enough not to see it. Speaking of being not blind enough to see it, here comes the Wolves. Two men that MVP kind of assigned to TNA and being his handlers and being his spokespeople when he first came into TNA as the investor. Wolves felt that MVP turned his back on the fans and all the wrestlers by being his power, money hungry fiend. And MVP's like, listen, I didn't turn my back on the fans. Oh, you? I gave you guys an opportunity to tag team titles. And all that done for you, this is how you're gonna pay me back? Bam! Slap in the face. Ball happens. 2 on 3. Basically, MVP's crew had the advantage with the, beating the crap out of both guys with one guy advantage. Lashley and MVP just dominant. And King as well on the Wolves. Ending with a vicious move as Lashley spilled that. Basically, Davey Winters was like the punching bag. As he got speared off the stage through a table by Lashley, sending him to the hospital for the evening after that vicious spear from Lashley. Of course, Eddie would join him to take Davey to the hospital, but as we would see later, Eddie would come gunning back, wanting more revenge. But before we get down to Eddie's return, let's get on down With another segment, we continued on with Eric Young coming out. After that beatdown of Eddie and Davey, Eric Young came out saying that I'm disgusted with you, MVP, by your actions, your power-hungry moves, and I hate you doing this, and I want a piece of you now. So MVP brought out his crew yet again, talking down to MVP, talking down to EY, the sellout, and then here comes the attack again on EY this time around. And as EY was getting pummeled by the 3-on-1 attack, here comes Austin Aries to the rescue. Of course, Austin Aries was tossed up by security. Aries knew MVP's motives all along. He was even anti-MVP from the get-go. But now, everybody kind of believes a double now, because now MVP has turned out to be the way that AW knew that MVP was going to end up being. A power, money-hungry fiend. And as Aries took care of the crew, he wanted a piece of MVP. So MVP would take on Austin Aries later on in the evening, while EY would take on a then unknown opponent. We would find that opponent out eventually. So there you go. AEW's been playing well. He's been heel. He was heel for a while. Now he's apparently turning face again. Always playing both sides. Being a heel and a face. But now let's get down to our first matchup after 30 minutes of beatdowns from the MVP crew, but then being won up by A-Dub and EY. We got our first matchup, an open challenge for TNA Knockouts Championship, as Angelina Love would call out, specifically calling out a newbie, or in other words, ducking Gail Kim. Now, Gail Kim pinned Angelina Love in a tag match last week. I even said that last week in my review, that Gail Kim and Angelina are going to start a feud leading towards a match at Slammiversary. We saw Gail Kim beat down Angelina backstage before the open challenge was called to the ring. And like I said, Angie excluded anybody that's old. Basically, she was a newbie. So we saw Brittany. Now, I've been down on Brittany, but not showing enough of a personality and ability. I think Brittany looked really good in this matchup tonight. It's probably her best match in TNA thus far. She's got a lot of potential. She's young, She's young. She's got time, to develop herself. And she looked pretty good in this matchup against Angelina. But of course, the experience and a little help from Velvet outweighs youth and beats youth every time. So as Brittany was on her way back after a mid-match Angelina control, it was pretty good, pretty decent matchup. And like I said, Brittany looked very well, especially in the later half when Brittany was doing good moves. And cheering that Angelina rolled up. But I think Stifler's got a thing for the beautiful people. Stifler was distracted by Velvet as Brittany had the pin. But then with that referee distraction, Angelina got the advantage, took advantage of that distraction with the backdoor Botox injection kick and the 1-2-3 victory for Angelina. So, like I said, experience and help from Velvet got the victory for Angelina. But then Gail Kim came out. I knew Gail was going to get involved sooner or later, whether it was during the match or in this case, after the match. So Gail came out, beat down Angelina before Velvet pulled her out from any more damage. And like I said, Gail and Angelina, I think that feud's heating up. And I think it'll head towards a match at Slammiversary for the not the tag title, but the TNA Knockouts Championship. Speaking of a feud that may end up culminating in a match at Slammiversary, we would go to a local bar as Mr. Anderson was confronting James Storm. Now, their match last week, pretty good matchup. And in the beginning of could be a good feud between these two. When James Storm gained the victory with that beer in the mouth after trying to hit Anderson with the bill bar. That was a fun match last week. Pretty fun match. And at least they're going with it. They're continuing this feud by having these guys meet up at a bar and Anderson challenging James Storm to a drinking contest. We would see various segments throughout the evening of these two having themselves a drinking contest. And it seemed like Anderson was getting drunk, but he gave a little wink. He didn't really drink beer. He drank fake beer. His plan was to get James Storm so drunk that he would be prone and vulnerable to a beatdown and being helpless and defenseless because he's drunk and not able to defend himself because he's not sober. And the plan worked out to a T as Anderson, not drunk at all, beat the crap out of Storm all over the ball and knocking him out the ball. So Anderson's plan of getting James drunk and vulnerable for a beatdown ended up being successful. So this feud changing up between these two, I think it's a decent build-up for a match at Slammiversary after that fun match last week because Anderson wanted payback. Like I said, if James Storm wants to spill beer in my face or spit beer in my face, I'm going to get revenge by getting him so drunk, I'm going to beat his ass down without him being able to defend himself because he loves beer. So that's Anderson's plan to a T, and I think this feud could end up being a good one, especially after a good match last week. Now on to our next matchup. MVP taking on Austin Aries. Because this match, Aries was going on full momentum as he basically attacked MVP from behind. As MVP was outside the ring, his back was turned. Aries came up the top with an axe handle off the top, knocking out MVP as we would begin this matchup. Fun little matchup between these two gentlemen. They've faced off before when MVP was still a babyface. So seeing these two wrestle again with the opposite motives now, with MVP not being a heel and Aries being a tweener or a face or whatever, it's a very different scenario now with these two guys switching positions, being one now a heel that was a face and one that was a face now a heel now a face now a heel. So. And Aries had the best of MVP at one point, as he came up with his high-flying motives. And of course, MVP with his swagger and his bullying, he tried to get his shots in too, and he did. Got his shots in on Mr. Aries. Aries came flying back. I mean, literally flying back with a big drop kick and a forearm. And then, of course, as he was ready to dominate, and had MVP down for a big elbow move, here comes Kenny King to knock him out, causing a disqualification. And we see like a pattern tonight. When Austin Aries, or should I say when Eric Young gets his ass kicked by MVP's crew, we see Austin Aries to the rescue. And whenever we see Austin Aries get his ass kicked by the crew, which what happened after AEW got the DQ win, after Kenny King got involved, Eric Young came to the rescue. So both these guys, TNA original guys, having each other's backs. Because you gotta have each other's back, because no one else is gonna have your back. Because with MVP having the power to fire and hire anybody, because he's still director of operations. He can hire and fire anybody. And everyone's intimidated to cross the boss. So they try to, like I said, Eli tried to save A-Dub, but he got beat down as well. Speaking of crossing the boss, even though MVP's director of wrestling operations, there was only one person still on top of the food chain, and that is the TNA president, Dixie Carter. In the midst of this beatdown of A-Dub and Eli, here comes Miss Dixie Carter and Ethan Carter III along her side. And she's like, hey, you don't return my phone calls, because of course, a few weeks ago, Dixie Carter was banned from the Impact Zone by MVP. Saying that, you don't return my phone calls, and you've been ignoring me. That she's still the president. The MVP can't ban her from anything. And she's trying to kind of manipulate or kind of tease MVP. But as that happened, here comes Bully Ray out to try to finally put Dixie Carter through a table. We've been seeing the Wild Goose Chase ever since not just Dixie was banned, but since both Dixie and Bully Ray was banned a few weeks ago. Bully's been chasing Dixie Carter through the TNA offices, even through her own home last week, to once again try to get her through that table. And she tried to escape yet again. And Bully Ray said, once again, MVP, you sold out to the fans. You sold out, turned your back on everybody. I'm the one that basically gave you the position you're in now because I screwed Dixie Carter at lockdown after being paid off to be on insurance policy. So then Bully Ray got the beat down from the crew of MVP, Kenny King, and Lashley. A lot of beatdowns tonight. That's why you see the subtitle, MVP and crew dominates the evening. So after Bully Ray got beat down by the crew, I call them the crew for now until they get a better nickname besides Money, Power, Respect, and PR. Ethan Carter was golf clapping their efforts, and he took advantage of a weakened Bully Ray. Actually, Dixie Carter took advantage by saying, Ethan, get the table! So Ethan set up a table. The paws were flying out. But then Bully Ray, despite being staggered, tried to fight back. But then Ethan Carter took a cheap shot to Bully Ray's knee. Actually, that was after Ethan Carter got knocked down. And he had Dixie Carter prone as Ethan was down for like a quick second. Ethan came back up as Bully Ray was finally going to get an opportunity to have Dixie all alone with no one to save her. And that's when Ethan went for the cheap shot to the leg and spine busted Bully Ray through that table. And then after that, Bully Ray chased him out to the parking lot as Ethan, Dixie, and Rockstar spun at their side, drove off into the night, and ran from Bully Ray. I think it'll come down to Ethan Carter and Bully Ray at lockdown. Not lockdown. Slammiversary. That's where it is headed, I think. The whole Carter thing, I think it's because we saw Ethan beat up Bully Ray last week in Dixie's home. That Dixie Carter does not fear Bully or anybody. But I think not only will it be an Ethan Carter Bully Ray match, I think Slammiversary, not only will that match happen, I think during that match or after that match, I smell it. I predict that Bully Ray will finally get Dixie Carter through that table at Slammiversary. I smell it and I predict it. Now, on the next matchup, a Falls Count Anywhere match. And that was an interesting segment to build up more momentum for MVP's crew and, of course, more hyping up the whole Bully Ray and Dixie Carter thing. Now, on to our next matchup, the Falls Count Anywhere match. Magnus taking on Willow. Now, for the last couple weeks, we've seen these two wrestle with little weird finishes in part to distractions from Magnus's friend, Bram, who's been wanting Magnus to be more aggressive. A few weeks ago, we tried to see him trying to make Magnus grab a weapon, and he got disqualified, blah, blah, blah. So tonight, Bray was going to give Magnus the opportunity to really be aggressive with no DQs at all with his Falls Count Anywhere match. But it was Willow who came out flying out from the start. And it was a decently fun match between these two gentlemen. It hyped up more of this scenario with the Bram Magnus situation. And I wish they used more weapons though, as we would see Bram on more than one occasion try to once again give Magnus a weapon to use to really bring out his aggressive side yet again. We've seen it one time that Magnus denied. And once again, Willow took advantage. But Magnus, even without the use of the first weapon given to him by Bram, still became aggressive by nailing Hardy outside the ring and really be aggressive without using weapon at all by, using the ring apron and really showing off aggressiveness. And then Willow came back with some big moves, trying to go for a swanton and missed. And he even tried for a twist of fate on the steps. And this is when the match, this is the ending here. After Hardy tried for the twist of fate, but then Magnus countered to his own move. Bram once again gave Magnus a weapon, or tried to give Magnus a weapon this time. Magnus took the weapon and nailed it to Willow's gut. But as Bram was saying, nail him in his head! Whip his head off with it! You saw Magnus once again have that hesitation to use that weapon. And for the second week in a row, hesitation to use the weapon and use his aggressive side cost him yet again. As he dropped the weapon, ate a twist of fate on the steps from Hardy. 1, 2, 3 victory. This is the second week in a row that Magnus resisted using a weapon and lost to Willow, being distracted by hesitation yet again. So there you go. He did use the weapon, but not in the way that Brand wanted him to, nailing Hardy in the head. Now we're on to another segment now. Last week we saw Gunner visiting Sam Shaw in the Looney Bin. We saw like the start of it, and then this week we really saw Gunner talking to Sam Shaw, saying that, Sam, I've been in your position. I've been in the Looney Bin. I've seen my friends in the Looney Bin. They went crazy. He went to a place like this that he can see where Sam's headed towards, being his Looney guy. He needs help. So Gunner's there to help him. This is kind of an intriguing storyline and kind of interesting. We'll see how this goes. This is a very... Is Gunner turning heel? This could be the start of Gunner turning heel. You know what I mean? Gunner's been a good face. And he was a heel as part of Immortal Bank a couple years ago. So we'll see how this goes with this ongoing Sam Shaw Gunner. Let's call it a relationship. After that, on with our next segment. I told you in the beginning of the video as the Wolves were pounded down by MVP and his crew. And Davey Edwards got speared off the stage through a table by Lashley. I told you that Eddie, who went to the hospital with Davey, would return. And Eddie did return. It called out all or any of MVP and his crew to come on down. And Kenny King took it. And it was an impromptu fight. They just brawled all over the Impact Zone. That was a fun segment. I've been saying that lately. Last couple months, we've seen these non-sanctioned impromptu brawls in the Impact Zone. We saw Billy Ray and Bobby Roode get involved in a little bit of an impromptu brawl. It wasn't even a match. It was more like a fight. That was a fun segment. And there's another fun segment. These two guys were just brawling all over the Impact Zone with Eddie gunning on and going off on getting revenge for he and his partner for the beatdown earlier. It looked like Davey was cheering on Eddie for getting the revenge, nailing him outside the ring. And really nailed him against the steel steps a few times and really just pounding on Mr. King until Eddie got pounded down by King to end the segment. As Eddie got slammed through the steps. And then King had like some double-handed back suplex thing on the steps on Mr. Richards. Like a big suplex move. So there you go with King laying out Eddie, despite Eddie fighting valiantly for revenge for not just him, but his partner Davey. So we'll see how long. I think, I even saw it from the beginning, I think another match for Slammiversary, I would not be surprised if they had Bobby Lashley team up with Kenny King to take on the Wolves for the tag titles. I would not be surprised if that match gets made soon as well. So a couple matches could be made for Slammiversary. Anderson, James Storm, Gail Kim, and Angelina. King and Lashley against the Wolves for the tag titles. So I think those three matches could be made soon. And also Ethan Carter and Bully Ray. And I would not be surprised if that match is the tables match. And of course, MVP will take on Eric Young at Slammiversary. But tonight, Eric Young will take on Bobby Lashley. Yes, that was the mystery opponent that MVP was alluding to. That he would tell Eric Young who he'd be facing tonight in due time. In due time, we would indeed find out that Bobby Lashley was going to be the guy to take on Eric Young in our main event. As all three of the MVP crew had a match. You know, MVP took on Aries. Kenny King had a little impromptu fight as we just witnessed with Mr. Eddie Edwards of the Wolves. And then we got Lashley taking on Eric Young. Now, like I said in the beginning, it's kind of weird seeing Lashley as a heel. At least as long as Lashley doesn't talk and let his actions do the talking, which is exactly what happened. And we, of course, had the referee, Brian Hebner, being put in a precarious position. Of course, not wanting to intimidate or cross the boss head, his hands tied, as we would see in the ending of this matchup. As Bobby used his strength It was an interesting main event. It was an okay little main event, despite the screwy ending. With Lashley, really, because Lashley's really strong. He got the height advantage and the power advantage. He used that advantage to his liking. And he just pounded on EY. Just pounded on him. Big time with the power moves and going for his big dominant move at least once in the match. And this is like the turning point. As Lashley was just pounding down on EY and was ready to do the dominator move on EY. EY would counter it and would come back with a big move. Some big boots in the face, some big power punches, even nailing the pile driver after getting out of the Dominator. So after that pile driver, we would have EY powering back after that pile driver, and after being pounded on by while getting pounded on by Lashley for most of the matchup, getting onto the top and ready to deliver that elbow. But MVP and Kenny King would come to interfere. But the referee didn't disqualify. Didn't disqualify Lashley because his hands were tied. MVP talked to Brian Hebner backstage saying, "Let you not cross the balls, Hebner. Do the right thing tonight." So Hebner did the right thing according to MVP. He did not disqualify Mr. Lashley. Instead, he let MVP and Kenny King get away with distracting EY, tossing him up the top, and leaving him prone to a big spear. Then Lashley nailed the Dominator, and with hesitation, Brian Hebner counted the 1, 2, 3 for a Lashley victory. And pounded on EY once again, and for the third time tonight, EY was saved again by A-Dub, coming in with a candlestick. But even with a candlestick, he would soon be nailed with the Warrior Flush from King. So there you go, MVP and his crew walk out of Impact, standing tall, and making another impact. So there you go with that. So it was a fun matchup. Lashley looking strong as hell. He looked pretty good. He was a good wrestler, and he still is. He doesn't wrestle as much as, I think he wrestles more than Batista. Maybe, but anyway, of course, EY being a comeback kid, the underdog, come back strong. Then, of course, getting the screwy finish from Lashley's friends, MVP and Kenny King getting involved. And referee not disqualifying him because he had his hands tied, not wanting to cross the boss after being talked to backstage. So there you go. The World of Slammiversary continues on. So we know one match, MVP against Eric Young. And like I said earlier in the evening and throughout this review, I predict that more matches, we've seen the seeds planted for possible matches at Slammiversary. So I predict within the next 2 weeks, we'll get the official announcements for Angelina Love against Gail Kim for Knockdown's title, James Storm against Mr. Anderson, Ethan Carter III against Bully Ray, and for the tag titles, the Wolves against MVP, friends, Bobby Lashley, and Kenny King. So there you go. That is it for my TNA Impact Wrestling review for this evening. Thank you all very much for watching. With that in mind, you've all been attacked by the review from Zach. Have a great and safe Memorial Day weekend, everybody. The unofficial kickoff of summer is finally here. See ya. Enjoy your weekend. Yeah.